Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about Architects of the West Kingdom, the cooperative scenario where players work together to defeat the vile Overlord. So players will either win or lose together. I'll just talk briefly about the setup. So you're going to be playing with the variable player power sides with the grey background, so players will choose those. Then players get given one of these new apprentice cards to start the game. They're double-sided and they're all the same. So they're just going to pick which side. The only thing that differs between the cards is the skill icons they give you. And then we also do an apprentice draft, like what we do at Age of Artisans. So each player will start the game with 2 apprentices out of their 5 limit. Then we put these little overlay tiles on the board, one on the King's Storehouse up there, and then one on the guardhouse over there. We've got 2 of each of the Overlord demand cards, so you shuffle them and add 1 for each number. So there's another 4 that I've left out over here. They go back in the box. Then you look at the player board that you've got for the Overlord. So I've got the blue background one, which is easy. This has a bell icon in 6, which means we have 6 event cards. So get rid of the rest and have 6. Shuffle them. And then if you wanted to play on a harder mode, you use the red board, which there are only 4 event cards. What else? We've got the Overlord's scheme deck. So if you're playing with Age of Artisans, you'll have add this card to the starting deck, which are the ones with brown banners. You shuffle them all, chuck them on the Overlord's draw pile, and then we've got the advanced schemes. Now this works a lot like our solo modes. We've got this one here with the red arrow. Put that on the bottom. So that's the final card that he would add to his deck. And then shuffle the rest. Like so. And chuck them to the side. And then the Overlord, he starts the game with 20 workers and a supply. Just like everyone else. Cool. That's pretty much the setup. Everything else is just the same as standard base Architects of the West Kingdom. So how is it different for the players? Well, we've got a few changes to the rules. First off is the town centre. Now you can only capture your own workers and the Overlord's workers. And you can do 1 capture from 1 location per worker. So I could capture the Overlord's workers with 1. I've got 2 that I can capture from 2 different locations. And then 3 I can capture from 3 locations. And so on. Remember, you can't capture each other's workers. Then when I come to the guardhouse, I get 2 coins per Overlord worker that is put in prison rather than 1. So this would net me a whole bunch of coins. The other change to the guardhouse is that, let's say that blue's workers are in there. I come over here. I can take an action to free any player's workers. So I could free all of blue's workers for 1 action. And then if there was some of mine in there, I could free mine for the other action if I had 2 actions. So you can help each other out in this way. So that's sort of the changes to capturing and prison mechanics and stuff like that. The Overlord doesn't really get debts or lose virtue or anything like that. But if they do have more workers in prison when the black market resets, if they've got the most, then players won't get debts. That's the only kind of thing they do with that. Okay, we've got this other icon here, which is the 2 handshake symbol. Those are donations. So what you can do with donations is you can give other players stuff, so you can cooperate in this way. So if I came here to the King's Storehouse, I can take an action giving me 2 donations. I could donate another player 2 gold or a gold and a coin. I could give them some of the deck cards. Maybe they're better placed to pay them off or flip them. I could give them some building cards from my hand. Maybe it's better for their strategy. So players can talk about this sort of stuff and their hands are open information. The other thing you can do with donations, and potentially more important, is donate to these Overlord demand cards. So we start the game with the first one face up and the rest of them face down. But over the course of the game, they will get revealed. You'll see that there's a player count and then a type of resource and how much you need. So in 2-player, we're going to need to have donated 6 clay to this demand card. If we succeed over here, each player gets 1 point at the end of the game. If we fail, each player loses 5 points. And these sort of ramp up. So when the next one's revealed, we see that we need to have delivered 4 cards to this demand card. If there were 6 players, it would be 8. If we succeed at the end of the game, each player gets 2 and then loses 4. And that wraps up. Each player gets 3 or loses 3. Each player gets 4 or loses 2 because you've got less time to kind of respond to them. And there are 4 more in the game. So we've got also one for marble, coins, flipped debts, and stone. But you're only ever going to see 4 of them. Now, if you finish the game nice and early and haven't revealed the 4th one, this one here, each player will gain 5 points for finishing the game early. So the game will end the normal way, or it could also end if the Overlord can no longer draw any event cards. So if this event deck runs out and then the Overlord needs to draw 1 more, that will also end the game. If it ends that way, each player loses 10 points. So you don't really want it to end that way. So I'm just going to change the camera and then I'll explain how the Overlord takes his turns. Alright, so the Overlord is kind of like the last player. After you've gone round in the clockwise order, he will take the last turn of the round and he's going to draw 1 of these cards. Now this will allow him to place 1 or 2 workers and then trigger an action most likely. So this card here has a brown banner on the workshop, so you put it there, and if the arrow lines up, he's going to do one of his normal actions, meaning that he's going to place a worker at the workshop. And here it says that he either captures 2 workers per worker that he's got there of each player, or he's going to send some to prison. So if he goes here now, he's going to capture 4 workers from each player. So he's going to capture these 4 orange and leave 1 left of oranges, and then all of blues get captured. Now, at a later turn, let's say that that was empty and he came there. Instead, what he would have done, because there are no workers to capture, he would have put them all in prison. So that's sort of the general flows. If he's done all the capturing already, he's going to send them to prison. Then we would also resolve this stuff. So he's going to reveal the next Overlord demand card, and then he's going to add some tax into the tax supply, and then he's going to add an advanced scheme to his discard pile, like so. And then players can have a look at what this advanced scheme is that's coming up, because it's quite important that they are very, very strong. So maybe I'll go through all of the cards, because once you get used to these cards, you start to understand how the Overlord is going to play. So we also have this one here, where he goes to the town center and priority order. Priority order is where he's going to go to the location with the most workers, and it's broken by a tie, which is at the bottom here. Prioritizing mines the most, then King's Storehouse, all the way through to workshop the least. We also have this little icon, which means if any player has, for every player that has a worker in prison, they permanently are removed from the game. This applies a little bit more of the worker tension that is in the base game, because he does a lot of capturing. Okay, then we have this tax stand card. The banner here is not at the top, so he's not going to do any capturing from the tax stand. Doesn't line up with the little the banner there. But how he works with the tax stand is if there's 4 or more coins, he will rob it. If there isn't, he's not going to rob it. If he robs the tax stand, all the money's gone, and then he points the finger at the players. And so all players will lose a virtue. And then Silversmith, he'll just do some capturing. Okay, Guardhouse, this is where if he hasn't got his workers out, he will get his workers out. And then we've got the mines. These are pretty standard. Mines and then Black Market. Black Market's another one where he's not going to capture. Instead, he's going to go to the furthest most right available Black Market spot. In a 4 to 6 player game, someone loses a virtue. He's going to point the finger at someone. And if that was the final black market spot, he will trigger a reset. And then we've got this one here, the Guild Hall. So he's going to help to push the end game a little bit. He's got one card in this basic deck that will go to the Guild Hall each time. So he's going to put workers in the Guild Hall. Now the rough thing is that he doesn't add 1 to the player count. So in a 2-player game, we're only using the 2-player spots. So he's taking spots away from the Guild Hall. Now this comes into victory quite a bit. You'll see on the player board here, we've got the target is that we get 10 points per Overlord worker in the Guild Hall per player. So if we ended the game with, let's say it's a 2-player game with 4 Overlord workers in the Guild Hall, then the goal is 40 points per player, or 80 points collectively we need to get to win. Alright, and the red board is a harder total. We've got 2 more cards in this basic deck, and you get to know them pretty well. We've got a priority order card and an event. Okay, so what happens when you have the event is you draw one of these event cards. Now, when you end the game, for every event card that is still in the deck, all players gain 5 victory points. So there's another incentive to end early. So I'll run through what all the event cards are so you get the hang of what he can do. All players must lose 2 workers, starting from their supply. All players gain a debt or lose 2 coins. Trigger a black market reset. This one here means he takes another turn. This one here means that he's adding an advanced scheme to the top of his draw pile, so it's going to be the next card that he draws. All players, or some players, lose apprentices. Players can decide how many and which ones. All players lose a building card from their hand. And all players lose a virtue. So there's sort of nasty things that he does. Alright, and now I'll just go through the advanced schemes because these all feel different. Alright, so we've got another tax robbing card. Now, most of these cards he'll take another turn afterwards, so these aren't diluting his deck. We've got another adding schemes card, and then someone has to lose an apprentice, which is painful each time it comes out. We've got another one which is about losing workers, creating worker tension, and then he takes another turn. We've got one which is also painful where all players have to lose a building card, and he takes another turn. So when this one comes out, you know you need to add more building cards to your hand before you lose that one that you've been planning to build. Have another black market card. This time, someone has to lose a virtue when he goes there, and he takes another turn. And then finally, this is at the bottom, so it'll only come out after he's revealed all the others, is that he will reveal another event card. That can trigger the end of the game if they have all run out and he needs to draw one. A few things that I forgot to mention. One is that if he needs to draw a card and he doesn't have any in his draw pile, you just shuffle them and then chuck them back on the draw pile and draw the next one. And then if he ever needs to place a worker and he's run out, so one, he would do this town center action because he's got a worker, and then for this next action he's run out, what he's going to do is he's going to reclaim all of his workers from other players, from in the prison, from all of the locations except the black market and the guild hall. He will reclaim all of them and then he will take the action again. So that freshens up the board a little bit. The other thing I neglected to mention was what these actually do. So the clergyman and the scoundrel. So players are going to pick these at the start of the game, which one they want. The scoundrel is quite simple. Whenever you visit the black market, you can take 2 donations. So you can even donate things that you just got at the black market. So you could be, getting a whole bunch of marble and gold and giving it to the person who's building the cathedral, say, things like that. And then the clergyman This one is a little bit more technical, but basically, whenever you go to the guild hall, you get to make one donation per level of the cathedral that you've done. So if you're building the first level of the cathedral, you get to make a donation. If you then, after building that first level, you build a building, you make one donation. If you then build the second level of the cathedral, you get to make 2 donations. So if you rush the cathedral, do a whole bunch of those steps, and then start building buildings, you'll be able to do a lot of donations to other players or to the donation Overlord demand cards. So that can be quite good. Strategically, you want to make sure that you've got the resources when you build the building, not only to build it, but to make donations also. Great, I hope you have fun playing this. Thanks so much.